battle, the toing and froing on this issue that has been going since the presidential election was done and announced, and the country has never settled so far. And so we're waking up to depressing headlines like this: Kenya on the edge, or on age. And the country is staring at a series of protests that will paralyze business, schooling, and normal lives of Kenyans. From Wanjiku to the international community, all eyes are on the president and the opposition leader to come up with a solution, and fast. And this story is tucked away on page 4, 5, 6, and 8 of the Standard today. And of course, we know also they have rebuffed that particular effort that was proffered by the diplomatic community regarding the call to negotiations be on the table to discuss how we can restore peace in the country. And so you warned that today all the schools have been closed. This is the recent announcement from the Interior Ministry, and of course in concert with the Ministry of Education. Due to the protests, no one should be going to school, and that is for Nairobi County, Mombasa, and Kisumu. And the resumption of the school calendar will be announced. Of course, government gauging the situation on the ground as far as the protests are concerned. So be safe wherever you are. Make sure you also are discerning and very perceptive, listening to your instinct. Be home if you have to, and of course you avoid trouble as well. But we pray, if it is demonstration, it should be peaceful demonstration. So we want to urge Kenyans also to observe sobriety. Do not carry stones, do not pelt, do not loot. This is our country. When we demolish it, it will take long years to actually build Kenya and restore it to where it is right now. And we know when we always are hurtling towards the edge and teetering on the cliff there, sometimes it can be very dicey. We can plunge the country to a place where we can take 1,000 of years to restore, so to speak, sobriety. So we need to take good care of our country. Peace is very fragile. And so today we shall be discussing that and that after other issues, primarily focusing on that and how we're here because two men are holding this country at a ransom. We'll be joined by Ahmed Ashi, who is a governance and of course policy analyst. Peter Kagwanja, Professor Peter Kagwanja, is the CEO of Africa Policy Institute, Naomi Damba. He's also a partner with Glossop and an expert of foreign policy and defense. This is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Standard. As I mentioned, Kenya on age. I shall be running you by some of the other dailies as well, looking at the Daily Nation as well. I read a bit of it, but this is how it is looking this morning. And State of a Nation is given here. Clerics, foreign envoys say they are worried. The demos will reverse peace. Police expected to rein in the demonstrators, and like in the past, death and property destruction is the result. And we pray this may not really go that way. And leaders from both sides are prepping supporters to take on each other. Also, we have leaders from both sides, or government has said it will not be pushed into doing what opposition is agitating for. Opposition says there is no turning back. That is what we have on the Standard this morning. Kenya on the edge. Still on other news, shock as 200,000 schools' laptops gone with the wind. And IMF backs new taxes of OK's loan. Today also you have the Enterprise magazine coming your way as well. And there's a probing question: what next for Commonwealth Games? That is on the sports pages of the Standard this morning. The Daily Nation, Azimio demos on as truce bid flops. That is a splash on the front page of the Daily Nation today. All-day primary and secondary schools in Nairobi, Mombasa ordered to close. This is because of maandamano. And push for dialogue. Diplomats, religious and business leaders call for dialogue. Peaceful protest, and that has not happened so far. Working day. President Ruto set to launch 1.5 billion shillings water project in Kericho today. He continues apace with his work, regardless of a protest. That does not deter him. And security assurance. And TRCS urged those wishing to engage in protests to do so within the law. He also encouraged Kenyans to go about their business normally. And you can see an insert here of Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka speaking during a press briefing at Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Foundation Nairobi yesterday. He is flanked by Azimio leaders Martha Karua, Eugene Wamalwa and Jeremiah Kioni. And this is a D-Day. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya begins its three-day third wave of anti-government protest today, with coalition leaders undertaking to brave the withdrawal of the security to lead Kenyans in countrywide demonstrations aimed at pushing President William Ruto's Kenya Kwanza administration to address the high cost of living. This story continues on page 4, 5, and 6 of the Daily Nation this morning. In other news, Koome appoints 3 judges to hear tax law case. Of course, this is also attached to demonstrations because where we have all this trouble emanating is on the cost of living, and they've been stoutly denying this particular act that has really sparked a lot of uproar. If there has been an eruption of it in this country, he's actually the one. Chief Justice Martha Koome has appointed 3 judges to determine several petitions challenging Finance Act 2023, whose implementation was stopped by the High Court on June 30th. The CJ appointed Commercial Judge David Majanja, who is a presiding judge, and also Justices Christine Meoli and Lawrence Mugambi to determine 9 petitions. You can follow that story. You can see their faces as well in the Daily Nation, also in the Standard as well. On the sidebar, we have why top U.S. trade officials refuse to meet Kuria. And this is a reaction because of his tongue as well. Visiting U.S. trade representatives, Catherine Tai cancelled 2 scheduled meetings with Vocal Trade and Investment Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria over the latter's nasty public tirades and social media posts against individuals and organizations. This is what the Nation has established. You can read the story on page 8 of the Standard as well. And against all odds, for this couple, love is indeed blind. This is how the Daily Nation looks. Let's see the People Daily. Wrote a plot to crush Azimio protest. It says, Cabinet's resolve the state agencies will protect lives and property. Interior Ministry deploys heavy security agents in opposition strongholds. Police commanders warned that they will be held personally responsible for any demonstrations held in their areas of jurisdiction. 4, 5, and 6 is the story that you want to follow. So it seems there will be no demonstration, albeit peacefully, if it may be. The police have been given that command to make sure there is no protest within their jurisdiction. And we have here the Interior CS saying anyone planning to unleash violence on Kenyans is hereby warned to cease and desist. That is the story that you want to follow, as I've mentioned, on page 4, 5, and 6 of the People Daily this morning. MPs in push to trim pay of commission top officials. They want to make sure that commissioners, also the numbers are reduced. And if push comes to shove, also they should be working not on full-time basis, but on a part-time basis. That is the story that you want to follow on page 2 of the People Daily. And IMF approves 120 billion shillings. That is the cash to help Treasury fill gaps in budget, manage debt, financial risk in state-owned companies, and fight corruption. That is a story that you want to follow also inside the People Daily this morning. Mabalozi wa Kohoha, not Wakohoha. Mabalozi wa Kohoha, that is what we have here on the front page of Taifa Leo. She's laughing at me. And this is all about maandamano. Mapambano washutumu serikali kwa mauaji ya raia wakati wa maandamano, wakimtaka rais na Raila watafute suluhu kwa njia ya mashauriano badala ya kuendelea kusababisha umwagikaji wa damu kutokana na siasa za ubabe. That is Taifa Leo this morning, and these 2 men can help this country. If only they can actually turn their heads towards each other, or their faces towards each other right now. As Taifa Leo has put it, this is where it is right now. Everyone's back is against each other, and they don't want to see eye on eye as far as the raft of issues have been concerned regarding this country. We have everyone calling for them, or calling them to actually turn around and talk, from religious organization, business community as well. Everyone is calling for a peaceful country. This is Taifa Leo, and also on top there, vuguvugu la Mlima Kenya labuniwa. Arteta adai rais analeta Mataji Tele. You can follow that story inside page 20 of Taifa Leo as well, sports pages there. We have Business Daily. Tech moves to relax checks on large cash transactions. Right now, you can actually deposit huge chunks of money without CBK raising an eyebrow. And this is what is on the front page of the Business Daily this morning. $15,000 and below to be excluded from disclosures. Change could increase money laundering risk, despite the fact that we know also the Anti-Money Laundering Act has been propped up. This flies in the face of that particular Anti-Money Laundering Act that we've seen also. I'll give you the gritty details of it much later in the course of the program as well. This is the Business Daily. In Uganda, FDC's Day of Reckoning is a splash today. And also in Tanzania, government poised to challenge order to pay farm $110 million. Fuel firms speak out after Ewura warns hoarders. And also Tanzania, Hungary pledged to strengthen bilateral ties. And EIB promises investment boost beyond current 1.8 trillion shillings, that is Tanzanian shillings. Tobacco growers feel pinch of glut, dollar shortage. That is what is happening in Tanzania this morning. You might want to pick up a copy of it to get all the gritty details. The East African this week, South Sudan. ICC has started a probe into war crimes and crimes against humanity as horrors emerge from Darfur. Overlapping peace processes have barely produced results, and neighbors are worried of a full-scale civil war that will increase their refugee burden and security threats. This is a story that you want to follow on page 4 and 5 of the East African this week. Kenya loses $21 billion on demo day as Nairobi Security Exchange activity dips. And that was, of course, last week. We don't know what will happen today, tomorrow, and Friday as well. This number is bound to really go up, but this is an eye-popping figure, $21 billion, if that is the figure that is correct. You can follow the story inside page 10 of the East African. President Ruto is under pressure to save the economy as rival science dig in row of the cost of living. You can follow this story on page 10 of the East African this morning. Uhuru's tough assignment in DR Congo peace, you see, is banking on the former Kenyan president to return the warring parties to dialogue. And if we have time, we shall be looking at that as well, as we keep an eye on the streets of Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu, and the whole country at large as far as demonstrations are concerned. This is what Gado has drawn today in Tanzania. And it's all about Suluhu. All those who oppose, and you can see the changing faces of Suluhu Samia there. All those who oppose this deal, and Suluhu is transitioning to be a Magufuli, according to Gado. All those who oppose this deal, we will deal with them, banging the table there. And this is all about the port deal with Dubai, UAE, of course also Turkey of Tanzania, port deal. This is a story that you can actually try and follow up with the publications from Tanzania as well, as far as the ports and that particular deal with UAE, Turkey is concerned. So is she really shoving it down the throats of the citizen of Tanzania? That's the probing question, looking at that editorial cartoon. And we have Victor today. Loans. It began with Uhuru with a shovel, but now also Ruto is digging in with the aid of IMF, directing them where to really go as far as this particular editorial cartoon is concerned, if you may look at it. And that's the current state of play as far as loans are concerned. We can see 120 billion shillings as well, or 157 billion shillings as well, is what IMF also is currently giving the Kenyan government thumbs up, as they say, we are okaying the taxes, we are happy with the taxes. This is Victor in the Daily Nation. And in the Star today, we have Raila Odinga there, and of course with his political operatives and the supporters, the protesters, and we can see also the security officers who are ready to target the bullseye there, who are the citizens. Recently we've known, or we've learned of course, of Kenyans who've lost their lives during this particular protest. And right now we have Azimio who are threatening, I should say, to sue the police because of their brutality. And this is what has been drawn by Victor in the Star this morning. Let's begin there by introducing Peter Kagwanja. Also, we have Ahmed Hashi and also Professor Naomi Damba with us. We were expecting Professor Simeon Sungi to join us, but now he has actually cancelled that particular appointment as well. But we'll continue with the conversation. Good morning, gentlemen. Good to see you.
Good morning, Deba.
Yes, you look all gloomy today.
Well, there's a reason to be gloomy because we're witnessing perhaps, and God forbid, the tearing up of our republic. The great Abraham Lincoln, who's a role model to many, quipped once that any man can overcome any adversity. But if you want to know the character of a man, give him power. In Debal, we have given power to the president of this republic, Mr. William Ruto. We swore him in, and he's the leader of this country. The buck stops with our president. Debal, there's another buck that also stops with the leader of the opposition. Perhaps the most influential politician of his generation, or maybe of the history of this country. And Debal, the time today is not the time to point to the wounds of this country, nor is it the time to go and grab slabs of salt and rub them on those wounds. This is not the time for us to point out the massive loopholes in leadership in this country. Because Debal, men and women in this country are going to die today. And why are they going to die today, Debal? It's because there's no political leadership in this country. And that for the last 60 years, Debal, the political elite in this country have sold us out and have not provided the necessary leadership to move us out of poverty, ignorance, and disease. I testify to you as a citizen of this country, Debal, today, that after the end of the 3 days, the destruction that is going to be in this country is going to necessarily cause the president to have three options. And one of those options is to call for a state of emergency, suspend the constitution of this country, and rule by martial law. And Debal, that is going to take us down the gutter, because this country will explode, and several countries might join the neighboring countries and secede from this country. So that's not an option. The other option is for him to use police action in the army. And if we get the police out and get the army out of that barracks, it is the same process that's going to come up. Those officers in the military are not going to become military officers. They're going to come from Kisumu County or from Nyeri County. Because we know how unstable and how stitchy our country is. Debal, then there is only one path, and that path is the path in which the whole world is talking about, the leadership in this country is talking about, the institutions of this country are talking about, and the international community has just been speaking about that. And that is the ability of these two men to sit down and to politically resolve the issues that are at this country. And Debal, I think that it's a very difficult thing for both of those people to do, because Debal, the solitude between Mr. Odinga and Mr. Ruto is vast. And it might take Debal, it might need an intermediary. It might need someone to have the courage to try and bring them together and to speak to each other. Debal, if we let the country to the politicians, we all know what's going to happen. Because I was there in 2007, Debal, when this country was in flames. But Debal, the animosity and the anger and the feeling of desperation was not the way it is today. I remember going through a helicopter over Rift Valley and seeing the flames and the fires. And by the time I came back, my heart was not beating anymore. That is when we suspended mass action, because the country was gone. Therefore, Debal, I think that we should not have posturing. If the government says that that violence is being done in this country, Debal, the opposition has countered by saying that the violence is not theirs. So we cannot have a political situation in this country that says he said, she said, because it's not going to resolve anything for us. I therefore call on our president, humbly as I can. And remember, Debal, I have spoken to our president in this show many, many times. I have spoken to him in his own language. I have even sang a Christian classic. I have stood up in every way to say that he needs to bring this country together. And this was the first responsibility of this president, because he only won by 200,000 votes, which was taken to court. Half of the people of this country, Debal, did not vote for him. Half did. He went into government by a decision of the Supreme Court, which upheld the verdict of the Electoral Commission. Debal, it is therefore incumbent upon the president to reach out to his opposition leader, Raila Odinga, and to ask him today to come to State House and hold a joint press conference in which they can now first stop these demonstrations today. Not tomorrow, not day after tomorrow. We still have time. Before 9 o'clock this morning, President should call Mr. Odinga and say, meet me at the State House. And they can start talking during the day and then form the basis of what this country should do in the next few years, because after this Debal, we don't want to hear about demonstrations in this country ever again. We don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear about electoral commissions, Debal, in and out, making decisions that are being challenged. Debal, we want to know that our Supreme Court and our electoral commissions and the institutions that are the lifeline of this republic to be transparent, to be made up of men and women of goodwill who see the country's political situation, and to understand that this country needs a way in which it can reconcile. Lastly, Debal, I have always spoken here about the nature of our political system. The political system that we have, Debal, of the first across the post in which one person takes all, is at the epicenter of our problems, Debal. We need a parliamentary system of democracy in this country, where the entire nation can be represented, because, Debal, we are not a nation yet. We are forging a nation, and we are still in our customary and traditional worlds. And the project of nation building, Debal, in this country has failed. This is why we have these problems. I put it to you, Debal, that I urge the president of this country to call the opposition leader today so that these demonstrations don't start in this country.
Thank you, thank you. Professor Peter Kagonja, good morning.
Good morning, good morning.
Yeah, I would want also to hear your assessment before we delve deeper into it as well. What are you sensing? Any trepidation, any fear as far as today is concerned? And what will be the remedial measure? It's not about also sharing power, as many pundits will put it, but it's because of the country that they should each other seek to sit on the table and, of course, discuss this stalemate and come up with a happy medium.
I have a sense that Kenya has never reached the kind of a tipping point that we are at now. And everyone knows now that Kenya is on edge. It is true that the country is bleeding. Already we have lost lives. No less than 24 people have died in this kind of skirmishes. It is also clear that Kenyans themselves across the country are crying for peace. Even as we talk about the cost of living and other problems that the country is facing, I think Kenyans want peace. They are crying for peace. And I do not think that there is any other alternative other than to talk. I don't think so. Now, the interesting thing is that perhaps Kenya does not understand what we mean to ourselves and to the world. I dare say that we are a global public goods. We have no right to get into anarchy of any form. Because it's not about us. It's about Kenyan citizens. It is about our neighbors. It is about the stability of the world. Kenya is one of the 4 pillars of the African continent, what we call the pivotal states: Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Egypt. Ethiopia used to be in that count, but it is not.
It is not anymore.
Now, so we must begin to take our responsibility more seriously than we are doing. And we are a global public good because we are also the capital of the global, the group in the south. After New York, Geneva, the next is Nairobi. We are also the capital of Africa, United Nations. We are headquarters of many businesses that have trusted that we can maintain law and order and peace. So they have basically invested in our country in trust that we are capable of being responsible people who can keep law and order within ourselves and within our borders and outside our borders. Remember, we are backstopping no less than 3 peace processes on this continent. Sudan, South Sudan. We are also somehow responsible to Somalia, and we are in the Congo. Not only us, but our boys and girls are in the Congo. We are supposed to be backstopping peace in other parts of the world where, a part of Africa and the world generally, where we have the United Nations and other global actors have relied on us to be a pillar of global law and order, peace and security. So, the buck stops with the president. I don't want to talk about Raila Odinga. I don't want to talk about Uhuru Kenyatta. I don't want to talk about others. The buck stops with the president. To save lives, to protect property, and get the country talking about its future. We have a shared destiny, and he has to define it. Not in terms of us versus them, hustlers versus dynasties, stakeholders, what they're calling shareholders versus non-shareholders. All these divisive, these divisive and partisan divides that we're putting on Kenya is not going to help us. We have to redefine who we are. We are a people with a common destiny.
So do you think this particular vitriol or statements that have been said, maybe I should say carelessly from some of its leaders, the shareholder dividing, that has also culminated to where we are?
Yeah. No, we are
fueling the entire thing.
No. We are forming an ideology. We are forming an ideology that there are 2 Kenyans: the defeated or the vanquished, and the victors. And therefore, we are trying to impose a victor's justice. It can't work. 2, we have those Kenyans who have destroyed the countries and those who have messianic role to build the country. That is also not going to work. We have also divided people into those who are genuine Kenyans and those who are not genuine Kenyans. And we have conceived Kenya as a company, as a corporation. So Kenyan Inc. And the Kenyan Inc. has what we are calling shareholders and non-shareholders. Now, when we begin to have that kind of a discussion, we are not in the business of nation building.
Thank you.
We are in the business of destroying a nation.
Yep. No, Midamba, if Midamba Senior was here today, he will really be having a broken heart, seeing what Kenya is turning out to be. Yeah. I don't know what would be your sentiment, just reflecting also on what effort your father also put forward to making sure that at least Kenya, it is a peaceful country for where we began from.
Thank you, Dibal, and thank you, my colleagues. Mr. President, today I want to talk directly to you. My father, Walter Midamba, hid Mau Mau called Babu in Westland. He hid under his bed during the daytime. And at night, Babu went out with the rest of Mau Mau and did their things, which eventually brought us independent today. Today I want to speak about David, a young man who voted for you and who is peddling consumer goods at the parking lot near my home. I always buy my belt from these young people, and I always sit down with them and talk and hear their concern. David voted for you, and many of these young people did. Today, David and his colleagues are carrying empty sofrias because they're peddling consumer goods, but they cannot afford to eat at night. And they cannot afford to send their children to school. And they cannot afford any sort of luxury good that most of us have. Pope John Paul, when he came to Kenya, was asked what he was afraid of. He said he was afraid of mosquito. Pope John Paul ended up calling the southern Sudanese leaders and washed their feet. And they continue fighting up to now. President Barack Obama faced a very tough race issue that came from a conflict in New England between a professor and a racist. And they called a racist to the White House, which later on became what we call beer diplomacy. And that problem was solved. President Magufuli did not care for Kenya. He threw our chicken out. He sold the Maasai cows. When President Uhuru went over there, I went to greet his father. The result was that he returned by sending Tawusi, birds that means a lot to Tanzania, to our state house. And we harmonize our relationship with Tanzania. President Gorbachev and President Ronald Reagan had the shortest meeting in Reykjavik. And what we have was the result of harmonious European and a time that we have the safest period of time and development in Europe. We've seen a lot in Africa, and I've traveled a lot in this world. I live in America for over 30 years. We've seen Somalia, Congo, South Sudan, Sudan, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Libya, Rwanda, and Uganda go through turmoil. Kenya is blessed, like my colleagues have said. We're one of the pillars of development in Africa. And we can get better if we value the constitution of this country. The constitution that gave Barack Obama opportunity to become president of the United States also gave you opportunity coming from nowhere to become president of our country. That constitution called for two things. One, that you will unite us as Kenyans. And two, that you will fight corruption with all your given constitutional power to turn us around. We're receding. We're moving toward a very dangerous process. You have some good people in your administration and some very, very bad people whom I don't think are helping you. You're the captain. We are all stakeholders. We must reach our destination, and you can change the name and your reputation like Barack Obama did in the United States.
Well, thank you. Great, let's leave it at that. After Naomi Damba has given us a post giver to just ponder about. And I think the president, if he's woken up this morning and is listening to him, all the pundits are saying is the buck is stopping with you. But let's just listen into the soapbox just to hear what other leaders have to say from Azimio Kenya Kwanza regarding today. And remember also, schools have been closed here in Nairobi, Mombasa and Kisumu as well. Let's listen in.
We encourage Kenyans to continue picketing, demonstrating, and protesting in their own ways, in their own local areas, as much as they can. Our voices must be heard. In Nairobi, we will have 3 convergence points: Joseph Kang'ethe grounds, Kamukuji grounds, Jacaranda grounds. We ask Kenyans to come out of their homes and bang sufurias, pots and pans to signify lack of food. The Sufuria movement kicks off tomorrow and continues until the battle is won. At that hour of midday, we also call on motorists to stop wherever they are on the highways and roads and to hoot and flash lights in support of this movement.
Wakiandamana wanasema peaceful demonstration. Imekuwa peaceful hata mkiona nyinyi. Juzi ilikuwa peaceful. Waling'oa barabara ile ya ghorofa. Sasa kama wanang'oa barabara ya ghorofa, watapagisha kweli mahali popote? Si watu walikufa? Si magari ilichomwa? Hiyo ndio tunataka kweli hapa hivi.
Nataka nimwambie huyo bwana, pengine kama utafanya maandamano utafanya kwako. Na kama kuna mahali utachoma kwako. Hakuna mahali utachoma tena Kenya hii. Kwenda uchome kwako, kwenda ufanye ile unataka kufanya kwako. Lakini hapana kwa Wakenya wengine.
We confirm the security cover for our leaders has been withdrawn. Honorable Raila Odinga and Honorable Stephen Musyoka are entitled to round-the-clock protection by the state, not as a favor.
Leaders must be protected, but so long as people are protected, more so if they can protect our demonstrators.
Na tuweze kunyamaza kama baba yuko katika hatari kwa serikali hii ya Ruto na Gachagua.
Mimi nitakaa ngumu. Hawa nitawakalia ngumu.
Kaa ngumu kabisa, kwa sababu nchi hii haiwezi endeshwa kwa maandamano.
Basi maandamano tutaendelea nayo kila siku. Muwarudishie security yao kwa sababu ni haki yao, nao ni viongozi wa Kenya.
Tunawaambia watafute manifesto yao. Waache mambo ya Raila Amolo Odinga. Waache mambo ya Uhuru Kenyatta Mwigai. Waangalie manifesto, wafanyie wa Kenya kazi.
Only mission of OSU squad is to assassinate or grievously harm Azimio leaders and Kenyans protesting against harmful government. We know its members wear civilian clothes. They travel in groups of 5 people from one ethnic community. They are heavily armed with lethal weapons. They fired at people from unmarked green, black, gray, silver, red, and white, mostly Subaru vehicles.
All right, it bears reminding as well that the Ministry of Interior and National Administration had given this particular statement. And if you're not aware, you're waking up this morning, prepping up your children to take them to school, the government has received credible security intelligence. It says that criminal elements planning to unleash terror and violence on the public tomorrow, which is today, this was released yesterday, intend to engage in armed skirmishes with security agencies around certain schools within Nairobi and Mombasa cities. And as a precautionary measure to ensure the safety of school children, it has been decided that all day primary and secondary schools within Nairobi and Mombasa cities shall remain closed today. The Ministry of Education shall announce the resumption of learning in the aforesaid schools upon assessment of the security situation in the course of today. This is, of course, Kithure Kindiki, the Cabinet Secretary for the Interior and National Administration. This was released yesterday, the 10th of July 2023. And also we have the Kenya Medical Association, which has given a statement on the scheduled national protest. This was released yesterday as well. The Kenya Medical Association is the national umbrella association of doctors in Kenya. KMA's twin mandate is to champion the welfare of doctors and advocate for delivery and quality healthcare in Kenya. Kenya Medical Association raises concerns over the safety of patients and healthcare providers during the upcoming scheduled Maandamano protest. During previous protest, KMA noted that access to healthcare facilities for patients and healthcare providers was hindered, resulting in increased morbidity and mortality. We confirm that our members attended to hundreds of injured Kenyans and witnessed tens of fatalities as a result of the protest, and threat of this continuing is worrying. KMA therefore calls upon the government and its security agencies to ensure the safety of healthcare facilities, personnel and patients, encourages individuals seeking medical attention to prioritize their safety and seek care at healthcare facilities equipped to handle emergencies, urge healthcare providers to take necessary precautions and follow established protocols to protect themselves while continuing to provide essential medical services. Highlights the ethical responsibilities of healthcare professionals to uphold patients' care and support the community during times of crisis. We encourage healthcare providers to remain vigilant, maintain open communication and patients and provide necessary medical assistance while adhering to professional ethics and code of conduct. It continues to say, and also appeals for calmer and open dialogue to address the grievances leading to the protest while anticipating peaceful resolution of conflict and emphasizing the importance of maintaining a safe environment for the provision of healthcare services. This is from the Kenya Medical Association, and we want also to show you what the KEPSA, who are running the Daima Kenya, is saying as well. And this is a press release. They're saying, "Arise for Kenya." Kenya Daima condemns the current political stalemate and calls for peace and dialogue. It says during the campaign period, Kenya Daima engaged with multiple stakeholders and institutions with the rallying call, #Nitatenda wajibu wangu, that culminated with all major parties and presidential candidates ascribing to and signing the Kenya Daima Leadership and Peace Pledge. The pledge, which was signed by all presidential candidates, is a commitment to uphold the Kenya Daima's spirit of good leadership and accountable governance aligned to the Constitution of Kenya, especially Chapter 6 that speaks to leadership and integrity. And see, the pledge is signed by President William Ruto and opposition leader Right Honorable Raila Odinga. These were the pledges here, and they appended their signatures. Just to zoom in, we need to remind them today. This is what, Mr. President, you signed during the Kenya Daima, my leadership and peaceful pledge. I, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, from United Democratic Alliance, UDA, publicly express my commitment to uphold the Kenya Daima spirit of good leadership and accountable governance, as aligned to the Constitution of Kenya, especially Chapter 6, which speaks to leadership and integrity. In addition to inspiring a peaceful and fair 2022 general election process for a prosperous, thriving and peaceful country, Kenya, I hereby declare that, 1, I will propose, elect leaders of integrity who are going to work to improve the quality of life enjoyed by all citizens everywhere in the country. 2, I will rise up to the challenge of improving the lives of all Kenyan citizens, as well as hold all leaders and institutions to account. 3, I will take ownership and responsibility that will help my country achieve a value-based society for the prosperity of all Kenyans. 4, I will endeavor to all times to speak truth to power and to uphold the words of our national anthem. I will not be party to any form of incitement, hate speech, ethnic acts, or any form of violence, verbal, physical, or written, that will interfere with the peace and stability of my country, Kenya, before, during, and after the election period. Win or lose, I will take responsibility on behalf of myself and my party, team, people, to maintain peace and abide to the due process. I commit to put the service and prosperity of my country before self-interest and uphold the values of Kenya Daima for the common good. My Kenya, my responsibility. Today I stand to be counted as a person of peace, love, unity and integrity. And this is my declaration, ni wajibu wangu. This was signed the 4th of August 2022 in Nairobi. And there we have the signature there of His Excellency President William Ruto On the other hand, let's just read what we have from Raila Odinga, him pledging as well, just to remind our leaders that when they make these pledges, they will have to live up to the pledges as well. Your word is just as good as your bond. And this is what Right Honorable Raila Odinga signed. He says, I, Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, from Siaya County, publicly express my commitment to uphold the Kenya Daima spirit of good leadership and accountable governance, as aligned to the Constitution of Kenya, especially Chapter 6, which speaks to leadership and integrity, in addition to inspiring a peaceful and fair 2022 general election process for a prosperous, thriving and a peaceful country, Kenya. I hereby declare, and of course it is just the same as well as William Ruto's, I'll just read it just to remind them, I will support proposed elect leaders of integrity who are going to work to improve the quality of life enjoyed by all citizens everywhere in the country. I will rise up to the challenge of improving the lives of all Kenyan citizens, as well as hold all leaders and institutions to account. 3, I will take ownership and responsibility that will help my country achieve a value-based society for the prosperity of all Kenyans. 4, I will endeavor at all times to speak truth to power and to uphold the words of our national anthem. 5, I will not be party to any form of incitement, hate speech, ethnic acts, or any form of violence, verbal, physical, or written, that will interfere with the peace and stability of my country, Kenya, before, during, and after the election period. Win or lose, I will take responsibility on behalf of myself and my party, team, people, to maintain peace and abide to the due process. I commit to put the service and prosperity of my country before self-interest and uphold the values of Kenya Daima for their common good. My Kenya, my responsibility. Today, I stand to be counted as a person of peace, love, unity, and integrity. And this is my declaration, ni wajibu wangu. And this was even signed before the August, that was 7th July 2022 in Nairobi, and there is a signature of Right Honorable Raila Odinga. On that note, we take a short break. When we circle back, of course, we ponder on this and a raft of other issues.